grateful that you're here today because I'm really excited about sharing a project with you. We're going to be talking to you about teaching social sexual education to people with developmental disabilities, and we're going to be sharing with you a project that we are currently developing. So what we're going to be talking about today, we are going to kind of jump right into talking about developmental disabilities and sexual abuse. We're also going to be talking, review kind of current research that we have available that's related to people with disabilities and sexuality development. And I'll tell you now that you will probably notice that some of the research refers to people with intellectual disabilities, some of the research refers to people with autism spectrum disorders, and then other research refers to people with developmental disabilities. We understand that people with autism and intellectual disabilities aren't necessarily the same population. There is some overlap, but we're trying to kind of give you the best research that we know of that kind of covers that broad span of developmental disabilities. Now, my favorite part is that we're going to be sharing a curriculum with you, the Social Sexual Education Project. And we'll get to that soon. And we're going to talk about how this program is using evidence-based practices and how you can access this resource for free. That's another thing that we're excited about, is that we're developing a program that will be completely free to interested users. And I kind of want to give everyone a heads up here that starting on our first slide, we're going to be using some pictures that we actually use in our program. And we're also going to be sharing some videos with you that are a part of our program. And this program is about sexuality, and we do talk about appropriate and inappropriate expressions of sexuality, and we do talk about sexual abuse. And so some of these images and some of these conversations can be triggering for people, especially those of us who have experienced sexual abuse or know someone who's experienced sexual abuse. And so I just want to invite everyone to take care of themselves, and however they need to take care of themselves, even if that's stepping out of the room, that's okay with us. And we would really love to hear that feedback at the end, because we've shown this to some people with disabilities, and we have gotten some of that feedback, that some of these pictures can be triggering. So I'm going to leave this to Maurice to talk a little bit about some abuse rates.
Good afternoon. So what I want to do is I want to start with sharing some information that I think illustrates the need to teach social and sexual education to individuals with intellectual disabilities. NPR conducted a year-long investigation, and in January 2018 concluded that people with ID are sexually assaulted at 7 times the rate of people without disabilities. Now, as you can tell, that's a really high rate, but we have reason to believe that that rate could even be higher due to unreported incidents of sexual abuse. In confirmed cases of sexual abuse in residential facilities, people with ID were the initial reporter in only 3% of cases. So what this means is that people with ID are less likely to self-report. Therefore, many incidents of sexual abuse go undocumented. Law enforcement agencies often lack training in interviewing people with ID. In addition, people with ID are rarely used as witnesses in court. People with ID maintain a high vulnerability to sexual abuse throughout their childhood. Adults with ID continue to be targeted for sexual abuse at rates similar to those of children with ID. 64% of adult females and 50% of adult males with ID report being targets of sexual exploitation. So what this means is that knowledge decreases vulnerability. The more knowledge we have, the more education, the more experiences we have in sexual education development, the less likely our risk for vulnerability. We're going to switch a little bit to relationships right now. According to studies by Toronto's Red Path Center, 32% of adults with ASD report having a partner, and only 9% are married. So what this tells us is that people with ASD are less likely to be married or have a partner or be in committed relationships. Sexual expression among people with ASD. Now, what I want to do is get to the bottom part right there, which says 69.7% report being non-heterosexual. So what this means is that people with ASD have a higher diversity of identity and sexual expression. We're not quite sure why it's so high, but it'd be interesting to find that out. Other issues. When people are not provided with accurate and accessible information about social sexual behavioral norms, they are likely to demonstrate inappropriate sexual behaviors. Inappropriate sexual behaviors. Parents took a survey and found that 65% of parents reported their child had touched their genitals in public. 25% of parents reported their child had disrobed in public. 23% reported their child masturbated in public. And 18% reported their child had inappropriately touched another person. So what we hear from this is that these behaviors are very common, but a lot of parents are lacking the resources to address these behaviors appropriately. 62.5% of staff who work with people who have DD in community settings report that their consumers express offensive sexual behavioral problems. Among these staff, 83.6% report having serious difficulties addressing these sexual behavioral problems. So what this tells us is that these sexual behaviors are vast, and they don't just happen in a home environment, but staff in the community and community support people are also dealing with these problems, and there aren't a lot of resources to help these young people or older people address these problems effectively. So common outcomes. Individuals with developmental disabilities who engage in inappropriate sexual behaviors may experience negative outcomes, including injury, limited community participation, restricted access to educational resources, and social rejection. Now, I want to tell you guys a story. I've been a behavioral consultant and a therapist for 17 years, and the majority of my caseload are young men. And so I've worked a lot with young men on a lot of different issues, and one of the things that's striking that's been a repeated pattern for the time that I've been a therapist is that young men have gotten in trouble for doing things that are inappropriately sexual in public. Now, here's the thing. These young men, they're not sexual deviants. The thing is that they have urges and curiosities just the same way that we all have urges and curiosities. But they haven't been taught the knowledge to understand how to navigate those urges and curiosity effectively. And so what's happened is some of these young men go into the community, they stare at people, and they look at people, and they touch people in inappropriate ways, and they've gotten arrested. I had one young man that was arrested, and he stayed in the county jail for 3 months waiting a competency hearing to see if he was competent to stand trial. And I just think that this is a disservice. I think that there's a lot of different ways that this situation could have been prevented, and I think sexual education, sexual social education, is an important way to deter these uncommon outcomes. Inappropriate sexual behavior has been cited as the #1 reason people are referred to institutional living. Inappropriate sexual behavior has been cited as the primary reason that people with developmental disabilities lose community employment opportunities. And this just kind of adds it all together. I think what we're really talking about is a quality of life issue, and the more education and knowledge and experience that people have around social sexual education, the higher the quality of life is.
All right, so Maurice was brave in telling you guys all the bad news. So I'm going to come in with the good news now. The good news is that we really have a lot of information about protective factors of sexual abuse. And in fact, knowledge of sexuality is a protective factor against sexual abuse. Knowledge of sexual abuse is a protective factor of sexual abuse. And knowledge of self-protection is a protective factor against sexual abuse. We also know through research that assertiveness training in a classroom actually leads to the practice of assertiveness in real-life situations. And we also know that social skills training reduces the incidence of sexually inappropriate behaviors, and that's especially true when that social skills training includes a cognitive behavioral intervention. And so we've really tried to include all of this in the program that we're developing. So that brings us to the Social Sexual Education Project. So this project has a mission to reduce risk factors associated with sexual abuse and to increase protective factors of prosocial behavior. So we were able to get a grant that's funded through the Mental Health Services Act in partnership with the Department of Developmental Services. And for those of you who don't know about the Mental Services Act, this was Proposition 63 that was passed by Californians in 2004. For those of us who make over $1 million a year, we're taxed 1 penny, 1% of your income, personal income over $1 million, and all of that money is put into a pot to improve mental health services in the state of California. And the vast majority of that money goes out to county mental health services throughout the state of California. And as some of us may know, county mental health has not always been effective at serving people with developmental disabilities. And so a very small portion of that money was given to the Department of Developmental Services, who looks for innovative kinds of programs to meet the mental health needs of people with developmental disabilities. And so we were lucky enough to capture some of that money. And we have a 3-year project to create and pilot test a social sexual education program for people with developmental disabilities. And at the end of this 3 years, our program will be free and accessible to interested providers. So kind of our main project goals here are to reduce, to empower, and to educate. So we want to reduce rates of depression. We want to reduce rates of anxiety and trauma that's associated with the inability to access a relationship, and also the exposure to coercion and sexual abuse. We also want to reduce the expression of inappropriate or offensive behavior or unexpected behavior that may be experienced by folks in the community. And we really want to empower people with developmental disabilities to enter into consensual relationships of their choosing. We want to empower people with developmental disabilities to identify signs of abuse and coercion. And we want to empower them to live in the least restrictive setting of their choosing. And we're doing that through education. So we're directly educating people with developmental disabilities about their bodies, about laws regarding consent, and social sexual norms. So it's a 3-year project, and so we've put it into 3 phases. Year 1 is to actually create the education material. Year 2 is to pilot test the material. And then year 3 is to collect information based on the pilot testing and modify the curriculum to make it as good as it can be, and then make that accessible to the public. And we're right in between year 2 and 3 right now. So we'd like to share with you some of what we've done in year 1 and 2, and let you know what we plan to do in year 3. So in our first year, we've created 24 lesson plans that are divided into 2 programs. We have an introductory program and an advanced program. And every lesson includes written instructions for providers and then visual aids for learners, which include pictures, videos, and social cues. And all of our lessons are infused with evidence-based practices. So I'll kind of give you an example of what a lesson plan looks like. So this could be a lesson plan that an instructor might have in front of them, and they have the option, they could have this on some kind of tablet or computer device, or they could print it up and just have it in front of them. And so let's see if I can. And so we for every lesson, we have a little cue of why this matters. Why are you teaching this? Why is this socially important? And so we may include some research in that. And then we have the objectives of the lesson that the instructor can really focus on. All these pictures and videos that you see over here, that comes alongside this lesson as like a PowerPoint presentation. So these are the pictures and the videos that would be projected for everyone in the group to see, while the instructor has this with them, and they kind of have some ideas of what they could say or conversations that could be started based on those pictures and based on those videos. So our introductory program really focuses on concepts like what is personal space, identifying personal space, differentiating between public and private places, introducing assertiveness and assertive communication. We talk about dating and attraction, We also talk about identifying private body parts, and we start to talk about what sexual abuse is. And we want to show you a couple examples of the videos that are used in the introductory program. The first video that I'm going to show you is a video model of assertiveness. This isn't sort of a typical video model because we wanted to include a lot of cognitive behavioral parts. And so what we do in a lot of our videos is we have the actor kind of disclose right to the camera what they're thinking and how they're feeling, because assertiveness isn't always an easy thing to do, and we want to have a conversation about that.
Hey, do you have the time?
It's almost 2 o'clock.
That's a nice watch. Where'd you get it?
Oh, it was a gift.
Hey, I just remembered. I don't have enough money to go on the bus. Do you have $1?
No, I don't think so.
Come on. Someone with a nice watch like that, surely you have an extra $1. If I don't get on the bus, I'm going to be late for work.
Sorry, I don't have any money.
Then, can I borrow your phone so I can call a ride? There it is.
This does not feel right. I want to be a nice person, but this feels weird. I am very uncomfortable. He's sitting too close to me. He's asking me for things and I do not know him. I feel kind of scared. I just want him to leave me alone. I need to use assertiveness, but I feel nervous. I'm going to stop smiling. I am going to look him in the eye. I'm going to tell him that he is sitting too close and that he needs to back off. Excuse me, you are sitting too close and you need to back off.
Oh, sorry.
So that's sort of an example of the type of video modeling that we're doing. Thank you. Someone doesn't just demonstrate the behavior that we'd like them to see, but we kind of disclose the thoughts and the feelings that might go behind that. Another style of video that we do in the introductory program is that we've created a series of what we're calling vlogs or video logs. And what we've done is we've gone out and interviewed about 30 to 40 people to ask them a series of questions that are things like, how big do you feel like your personal space is? How do you feel when someone gets inside of your personal space? Have you ever seen couples kissing in public? How does it make you feel when couples kiss in public? How much touching is too much touching in public? And so we ask these kinds of questions as a means to gather information and to start conversations. And so the video log that we're going to show you today is on what it feels like to have a crush on someone. And I'm a little embarrassed to show this to you because Maurice and I are in it, and we've gotten the feedback that we should be less in it. So we're going to be edited out of these soon. So I'm sorry.
Hi, and welcome to Relationships Decoded. I'm Maurice Travis. I'm a therapist who specializes in relationships and safe relationship development.
And I'm Dr. Katie Pedgrift. I'm a clinical psychologist who specializes in relationships and how to avoid abuse.
Today we're going to talk about what it feels like to have a crush on someone.
A crush is when you're attracted to someone. It means there's something you like about the person and you want to spend time with them.
We wanted to learn more about how people feel when they have a crush, so we went out and talked to people. Let's see what they had to say.
When I had a crush on him, I felt giddy. I don't know how else to explain it. I felt giddy and warm inside.
It made me feel really happy and have butterflies in my stomach.
When I really like someone, I have butterflies in my stomach and my heart will start to flutter.
I start to get hot, like a little warmer, because I can feel because I can feel affection for that person, and it's like, oh, I kind of like you.
Having a crush on someone is great. It's super fun and exciting, and there's so many great things about it. It can also be awful if the person doesn't like you back.
It makes me feel, I guess a little shy around them. Makes me a little more concerned than usual about what they think of me. Makes me want to be closer to them.
Having a crush on someone can make you feel comfortable and uncomfortable. A crush can make you feel really happy and excited, and at the same time, it can make you feel really nervous and insecure.
It's important to learn how to deal with your feelings in order to make safe and respectful decisions. Managing strong feelings is one of the most important parts of having a good relationship. We'll see you next time on Relationships Decoded.
That's an example of kind of how we're trying to start conversation. Does it mean to have a crush on someone? What does it feel like? And to kind of get a sense of what other people are said and then what other people in the room might say about it. In our advanced curriculum, we start to talk about healthy relationships. We talk a lot about dating and emotions and how to manage some of the strong emotions that can come along with dating and rejection. We talk about personal boundaries and consent. We talk about safe dating practices, especially online dating practices. And we've gotten the feedback that we probably need more of that, including things like gaming safety and online social media safety. We do talk about sexual abuse, and we also talk about sexual health and contraception. I'm going to show you another couple video examples from the advanced curriculum. This is one that's about having a conversation about how even some of the strong feelings of dating and having a crush on someone can get in the way when you take it too far.
So, tell me.
His name is Jose. I met him at the mall. We just clicked right away. We seriously talked for like an hour. He asked for my number, and I already friended him on social media.
So is he like your boyfriend?
Yeah, I've called him like 20 times, and I sent a bunch of pictures on his social media. Wait, come here. Let's take a picture, and I'll send it to him so you can see my friends.
Okay. Dang, you get in relationships fast.
I think I'm in love.
So you really like this girl you met at the mall yesterday?
Well, I did, but she's already called me like 20 times, and she keeps sending pictures to me on social media.
Seriously? 20 times?
Seriously, 20 times.
Dude, that sounds like a stalker.
I know, I'm thinking the same thing. I mean, I really did like her, but after she's called me 20 times and keeps sending me pictures, it makes me kind of feel uncomfortable. And it actually kind of turns me off. I don't know, man. It's just, whenever I think of this, it just makes me feel like I never want to see her again.
Well, if you really feel that way, you should tell her to stop. And if not, block her.
So this style of video is really used as a conversation starter. How many times is too many times to call someone? How many texts is too many texts? How many times should you post on social media if you're not getting a response from someone? Or what is the typical kind of back and forth that you would expect at the beginning stages of a relationship? One more video that we'll show you that's from the advanced curriculum. Another thing that we've done as a part of the advanced curriculum is that we have a young actor who's, he's been great, he's been by far, he's our most popular actor so far. And he does a video series in which he talks directly to the camera as if he's making a video diary of his dating experiences. And so we show a clip of him every time in our advanced curriculum, and it ends up being the topic of that class. And so today we have one in which he experiences rejection. And I should say, I was so embarrassed that I had to be in one of our videos that I retaliated against Mary. And so, and so she is actually in this video. We've had about 300 volunteers participate in this kind of role modeling in pictures and in videos. And every once in a while, someone doesn't show up, so one of us has to stand in as an extra. And so Mary did that here.
So, things aren't really going that well. I'm feeling kind of frustrated. I went to the dance at the community center. I was so nervous. So my sister came over to help me get ready, and we even looked up some dance moves on YouTube. I was supposed to meet up with one of the guys from my basketball team, but he got sick and couldn't go, so I went by myself. When I got to the entrance of the dance, I almost turned and walked away because I was so nervous. But I told myself I had to do it, okay? I really want to meet someone I can date. So I pumped myself up, I walked into the dance, and I went straight up to the prettiest girl I saw. It was a total mistake. Okay, I didn't even pay attention to the fact that she was already standing and talking with another guy. I should have taken a minute to figure out the situation first. Anyway, I asked her if she would want to dance with me, and she told me no. I felt so embarrassed. I wanted to hide. I ended up hanging out by myself for most of the dance because I didn't want to get rejected again. And I'm bummed because they were playing really good music, and I didn't even get to show off any of my YouTube dance moves. There's another dance next month, but I don't think I'll go.
So this is a class in which we talk about rejection, and that can be a normal part of life experiences when people are getting to know each other and become interested in each other. So that's sort of an example of one of the videos that we use in the advanced program.
Okay, now that I'm very embarrassed, I would like to talk to you all a little bit about another part of this program that we've created. So in addition to the curriculum, we're also in the process of developing a web app support that's meant to be coordinated with this curriculum. So it's not meant to be a standalone, but more so a way to review some of the core learning objectives of the lesson plans. So what's great about this is that it's a way to track progress, especially for those of us who may have to track IEP or behavior goals. So that's one of the ways that it can be used. 6 of the activities I'll describe later, but one of the activities that's part of the web app can also be used as a pre and post measure. So that can be really useful for us to see how students are obtaining the information and also being able to apply it to new situations, and might give us some feedback on where they might need a little extra review or if they should take the class again when it's offered. Okay, so this is what the app will look like. Right now it's in beta testing. I'm going to pretend like I know what that means, but it's not quite ready, but it's getting there is what I hear. So this would be the homepage for the app that's going to be compatible to be used on smartphones, desktops, iPads, all those types of devices. What is great about the app is that it's not going to gather private or confidential information. So all that is needed to set up the app is either the teacher or facilitator's email information, and then the teacher can put an unlimited amount of students on the app. And so you can set up different profiles for the student. It could be their real name, maybe not. They get to pick what image they want to have as their profile picture, and then they can open up their profile and essentially see all of the activities that are available. And so this app does have the ability to store some data, so it will always keep the 2 most recent attempts of any activity. So you can kind of see that it should be really simple once it's out, that they'll just hit start activity. You can see how many times they've attempted the activity, and then the percentage on the left-hand side is the average between the 2 most recent attempts. Okay. And so the activities are going to use a lot of our visual supports that are embedded in the curriculum. So some of those images that we'll have already seen by taking the class. So this is an example of one of the activities talking about personal space. So above, I'm not sure if everyone can read it, but it says, are these people inside or outside of each other's personal space? So they're able to select between outside or inside. Once the individual responds, it gets immediate feedback of either it being correct or incorrect. When a response is incorrect, it gives a brief reason of why it is incorrect. So this is just a quick way to see what the app kind of looks like. So what's great about it is that it has some flexibility where a student could work on this in class on their own, or it could also be used in a one-on-one session where you're able to have dialogue or give feedback in the moment while using the app. So these are the 6 primary activities that will be part of the app. The first 3 are really core components of the introductory program. So in a sense, we can consider that the first 3 really need to be mastered well to think about the student moving on into the advanced curriculum. So that is the ability to identify when someone is either inside or outside your personal space, knowing the difference between a public or a private place, and then also being able to use the social cues, facial expressions, and body language to know if a touch is unwanted or wanted. The last 3 are more, that we go into more depth into these topics in the advanced curriculum. And so this is where we're using the information about how perspective taking to decide what might others feel like when we're doing certain touches or doing a certain behavior in public. And then we further go on to have an activity where they decide if a certain behavior may be legal or illegal to do in public. So this is going into the concept that we teach in the advanced curriculum, where we talk about what does it mean for sexual touching to be legal in the eyes of the law. And so we talk about that both people have to be adults, both people have to give consent, and they have to be in a private place. So this app is really great because they're able to take those rules and apply to pictures that they're seeing and practice it over and over. And lastly, they'll have the opportunity to look at pictures to decide if the pictures may or may not be showing sexual abuse. We talk about sexual abuse as looking at, talking about, touching, or showing private body parts without both people being in agreement, so without consent. The last activity, so I already talked about the pre and post measure that can be used through the app. The last one is really a review where it combines all of these topics into one. So it kind of mixes and matches them. So you kind of really have to think to make sure that you got all these concepts correct.
In our second year of the project, we're really focusing on pilot testing. And so at this time, we have therapists, psychologists, special education teachers, and behavioralists all pilot testing this program. And we've had 83 consumers participate in the program so far. These are all of the locations that are currently participating in pilot testing right now. And so this includes non-public schools and public schools. All of our public and non-public schools are doing this in their transition program. So for folks 18 to 22, this is an adult program. We also have some day programs. We have behavioral agencies. We have some group homes. North Bay Regional Center is running these classes in both of our offices. And the Santa Rosa Community Health Center is also participating in this. And Turning Point of Solano County, which is an organization that specializes in providing services to people who have developmental disabilities and co-occurring mental health conditions. So I imagine some of folks who may be experiencing some anxiety or depression that's associated with an inability to access a relationship may be participating in this.
A critical piece of the pilot testing portion of year 2 is really to gather feedback. And this feedback is really important for us because we're currently using that to modify the curriculum. We really want to make sure that we're getting feedback from prospective students and also people who are using the curriculum to teach. So this is an example of a lesson plan evaluation form. So all those pilot testers that are using it in the areas that Katie was just describing, every time that they do a lesson, they have to fill out this form. And this It's much longer than this. But essentially, they're giving us feedback about, was it easy to use? Were there conversations that came up that you weren't expecting? Were there areas that you would change, or pictures or videos that got negative or positive reactions? And so essentially what we're doing right now is looking through all of that feedback and then going back and making changes, either to the lesson plan layout, including the scripts that we have for facilitators to use, and also to the pictures and the videos. And this is a slide that is pretty exciting to me. So this is some data. It's very preliminary, and I know that the sample size is small, but I was really excited about the results. So this is the pre and post data from students at Sonoma County Office of Education. So before they took this course, I did the advanced curriculum with them. So you can see from this, so when we look at this slide, the green column is the pre-data. So all the students who participated took essentially what the pre-test is in the app. We didn't have the app yet, so it was just a paper form. And then the blue column is the post-data, so just after taking the course one time. So if we look at the results, it's pretty astounding for just taking the course one time, because this curriculum also isn't meant to just be taken once. It's a curriculum that could be taken multiple times or even as a review later on. So these students were only exposed to this curriculum for 12 weeks. So the first one, you can see that knowing just what the private body parts are before taking the class, about 60% knew what private body parts were and were able to identify all of them. But after taking the course, all of the students in the class were able to correctly identify private body parts. So right there, we're increasing that protective factor of knowledge about your own body. Additionally, when we talk about sexual touching to be legal, which I already referenced, before taking the class, a really small number of students actually knew what the law said about sexual touching. But after taking the class, over 50% of the students were able to identify what is the criteria for certain touching to be legal. Additionally, we just asked the question if they knew how to use a condom correctly, and this is part of the advanced curriculum where we talk about contraceptive and safe sex. So before taking the class, about 30% knew how to use a condom correctly, and afterwards, over 90% knew how to use a condom correctly. And we do have a video model of how you use a condom, and then we also have the ability to use a model for students to practice using a condom correctly. And then the last one, we talk about what are the rules to be in a consensual relationship. So in the advanced curriculum, we teach that with 3 rules. So both people have to be adults, both people have to agree, and both people have to meet face to face. So again, you can see big results that after taking the course, over 80% of the students were able to identify those 3 rules. In addition to getting the lesson plan feedback from facilitators and the pre and post data, we've also done a lot of focus groups or feedback panels. And really what we wanted to do was make sure that this curriculum was interesting and exciting to people who are actually going to be taking the course. 12 different focus groups have been held with 46 people participating. All of these people would be prospective students to take the class in the future, but none of them have. And this has happened across various agencies in Sonoma, Napa, and Solano counties. So at the very beginning of these focus groups, we just asked, what did they think about relationships, and asking about their experience of being in classes that talked about either sex ed or how to have a healthy relationship. And so I'm going to share some more data with you about it. So from all of the focus groups, when asked if any of them were interested in having either a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a partner, an overwhelming amount, more than 80%, said that they were interested in having a relationship at some point. And then when asked if they'd ever been in a class that talked about relationships, only 40% had. And we weren't able to do any follow-up to know what did that really mean. Was it a curriculum? Did it mean that they had sex ed in school? Or did it mean that someone just talked to them about how to ask somebody out? We don't necessarily know what that means, but we know that that number is very small. The focus groups then were able to see some of the visual supports that are used in the curriculum. So we showed them some examples of the pictures, some examples of the videos, just to get their feedback and the reaction of what they thought about it. So after looking at a variety of photos and videos, we asked, do you think that these would be a good tool, essentially to bring up conversation, to talk about these things? And you can see that we're at 98% believe that, yes, these would be good tools. And it was great to Georgia Pedgrift, who is our grant manager and community outreach coordinator, who really made all the volunteers happen, except for on certain days when some didn't show up. But she led a lot of these focus groups for us, and it was interesting, and I was able to participate in a couple with her. And when they watched the videos and the pictures, it really did elicit some good feedback and interest. So it was really, that was good feedback for us to get. And then after looking at all the pictures, so you saw these pictures, you saw the videos, would you be interested in taking a class that used these and talked about relationships? And about 80% said that they would be, which coincidentally is also the same percentage that said that they were interested in possibly having a relationship in the future. We also asked, if you were going to take a class like this, what would you want it to be like? And the data that we have gotten from these focus groups and these questions specifically has really informed what we're doing now during the pilot testing stage. So the overwhelming majority preferred to have a smaller class size to talk about these issues, and that they also wanted the classes to be co-ed, meaning that they weren't segregated by gender. And this has really changed how we've done things. In the past, I know that Katie has always separated classrooms, thinking that that would make people feel more comfortable and safe, but now we're starting to do more co-ed groups.
We're really making a concerted effort to infuse this program with evidence-based practices. And these are the ones that we're focusing on right now: cognitive behavioral interventions, video modeling, video supports, social narratives, scripting, and antecedent-based interventions. We will give you some examples of what that is. We bolded the cognitive behavioral interventions and video modeling because we sort of showed you an example of that, the very first video that we saw, in which a person kind of discloses to the camera what they're thinking and how they're feeling, and then they do a video model. And I'll show you one kind of more example of that.
Sarah's my closest friend, but sometimes she touches me too much, and that makes me uncomfortable. So I have to remind her that that's not okay. Hey, just stop! But if I did it like that, she probably wouldn't want to be my friend anymore. So I have to say it nicely, but also in a way that lets her know that I'm being serious. Please stop. You're doing the touching thing again, and that makes me uncomfortable.
So what's great about the curriculum is that we're also making it flexible for people to use and tailor to individual needs. So this is an example from our introductory program about how to make an assertive statement. So you'll see that there are steps that they follow, but we actually haven't given the actual language because we wanted people to be able to tailor that to the certain situations that maybe students in their class are facing or the individuals want to work on. So we're really creating space for evidence-based practices to be used, but also having it tailored to people's individual communication skills as well in level. And of course, good teaching practices is always infusing auditory and visual information, and so that is what we're doing. But we're also making sure that there's some visual supports that can be used not only in the curriculum, but even later on. So the students have a lot of chance to, we try to make things in rules so that it's easy to kind of memorize and then apply to photos. So this is an example of one of the slides that we have. This slide could also be downloaded and printed out and put up in a group home or in a residential treatment facility where people can have this as a reminder. So the visual supports can also be used flexibly, just like scripting.
I should add that all of our formal pilot testers, we're actually having them take an online training in all of the evidence-based practices that I mentioned, so that we can talk about how these tools can be used for them to use an evidence-based practice more flexibly. And so we're kind of getting feedback on that.
And we're also, in part of the feedback, is that we're creating more supplemental materials that are infusing more evidence-based practices, such as templates for power cards that people could easily edit to make appropriate for specific individuals.
I should also tell you that we were told that when you switch speakers, people re-engage. So that's why. There's 3 of us, and we keep switching back and forth. I hope it's working. In the 3rd year of our project, which we're just getting into now, we're kind of collecting all this information from pilot testers, and now we're editing and updating the program based on these kind of results, based on all this kind of information that we've collected. We are going to be making this program free and accessible to interested providers, and that's going to start to be available in January of 2020. And actually, our web application should actually be done in about 6 weeks and available for free on our website. And I don't know if we're going to, maybe at the very end, we'll try and switch to the website because it's a link, and I'm a little worried that if we do that, we're going to mess up this good thing.
I do want to share with you one of the first videos that we made as part of this project. This video was made to kind of promote this project and was shared across regional centers in California. It's been used to recruit volunteers for the photos and for all the videos. And we also are currently, these 2 newscasters are working on an update right now that we're going to film later this month. So you can always check back to our website to see what is our news broadcast updating our project.
Hello and welcome to the newsroom. I am Clark Danvers.
And I'm Amanda Chase. Thank you for joining us for a new special edition.
Newsflash! People with special needs are sexually assaulted way more than people without intellectual disabilities.
That's right, Clark. NPR says people with intellectual disabilities are sexually assaulted 7 times more than people without intellectual disabilities.
Did you say 7 times? That is unbelievable!
Yes, 7 times. I know, I was surprised too. It was a real epidemic.
Yeah, an epidemic that's not being talked about. Newsflash! For some people with intellectual disabilities, ending abuse starts with sex ed. In other words, simply learning information about healthy sexual development seems to serve as a protective factor against sexual abuse.
Really? Just learning about sex ed could protect you against sexual abuse?
That's right, Amanda. According to research, protective factors of sexual abuse include basic sex education, having knowledge about sexual abuse, and having friends. Studies have also shown that assertiveness training can lead to the practice of the assertiveness in real-life situations.
A class that talks about relationships, boundaries, and supports healthy lifestyle choices.
According to a recent study, only 32% of people with autism have a partner, and only 9% are married. This differs from people without autism. About 50% of people without autism are married.
That is a pretty big difference.
Yeah, you're right, that is a big difference. I wonder why that is. Do you think people with autism aren't learning enough information about healthy relationship development?
You know, you're bringing up a good point. I think that might play a big role. I'm sorry for the interruption, Clark. It appears we're getting some breaking news.
Yes, we are getting some breaking news. Thank you, Cara. That North Bay Regional Center has just received funding to start a social sexual education project for people with intellectual disabilities.
Oh, wow, that's exciting. Any more news?
Yes, thank you, Cara. The program is going to be designed to teach people with disabilities about healthy and safe relationships. It's going to include information about our bodies, safe dating, self-advocacy, and more! Let's cut to a quick commercial break while we learn more about this really cool project.
I really commend you for managing to do this without being so specific about sexual orientation. But there's a growing number of people with different gender identities, and that isn't addressed at all. And I think it's hard for them to even sit through this if you don't address that. I just wondered about that.
No, I agree with you that is a big issue. There's greater diversity, especially among people with autism spectrum disorders, in both their gender identity and sexual orientation. And we've definitely made an effort to show people with more fluid gender identities in the visuals in our pictures, and to include both images of gay couples and lesbian couples, and really a lot of diversity. And you're right, we don't have a lesson specifically that talks about gender identity per se, and that's probably something that's lacking in our curriculum at this point.
Is this website available to give out to families?
Yes.
And is the regional center ready for people to contact them about this program?
That I will be that person.
Okay.
And so yes, I think so. We don't have all the curriculum on our website right now because it's still in the process of development, but it will all be ready in 2020. And yes, we will be ready for that. For families to access it if they want to access it, for other providers to access it, and to contact me to ask questions about it.
And do they need to be 18 or have parent involvement in this website?
We're actually currently, we've been talking among ourselves about writing another program for middle school and high school. Because this is an adult program, it is for adults, and we talk a lot about you need to be an adult, you need to be consenting, and so we don't have the same material for children right now, people under the age of 18. But it's an area of need, and it's something that I'm definitely interested and committed to pursuing.
You talked a lot about the need that providers would be able to access this. I'm a parent, and my son has been offered programs, but he doesn't want to go into a program with other kids. But I think I would be able to facilitate and, obviously follow along with the great curriculum that you provided as just as mom. And so will you allow parents to have individual access to it?
Absolutely.
Okay, because you said providers all the way through the whole thing. So when she asked, I got a little excited.
Yeah,
I know.
And the way that we're doing it right now is we are pilot testing it with teachers, therapists, and behavioralists. And so we haven't done that yet, but I think that's a great idea, because absolutely anyone and everyone will be able to have access to it. I'm sorry? Any more pilot sites? We're a little bit full, but I'm open to it, yes.
That was I've got multiple questions, but for the sake of time, I don't know if you guys are going to be available after, because I don't even know if this question is going to come out right, because I've got so many. But, and someone just touched on it. So, because I work with 7th and 8th grade boys, so therefore the urge, they start to develop in that area before age 18. So, and I'm not even sure if this question is appropriate, because you guys talked more about, you talked about your project. So, but I'm thinking that you've got professionals there that you can possibly answer this question. How do you identify inappropriate sexual behavior acting out in the ASD population versus what would be considered normal sexual behavior?
So if I'm understanding the question, like what would you consider like untypical, like development versus typical development in a person with autism spectrum disorder? That's a good question, and we do actually I do some training on that, because sexual development can look different among people with autism spectrum disorder. One of the ways that psychologists identify autism spectrum disorder is that we find that people tend to focus on the details and can sometimes miss the big picture. And that tendency to focus on details does play itself out in the development of sexuality, in which someone may be very, very focused on one aspect of a relationship or one aspect of a human body. And I do think that that is normal sexual development in someone with autism spectrum disorder. And talking to them about that, and also talking about the broader social norms, I think is helpful for them. I see. So like what kinds of signs might indicate that someone's been exposed to sexual abuse? I do think a lot of those signs are similar to people with and without disabilities, that a hyper-focus on sexuality, hurting when it goes to the when one goes to the bathroom, all those kinds of things are all signs of possible sexual abuse. And so I would be concerned about any of those behaviors in any child who's demonstrating those kind of behaviors or has those kinds of symptoms.
So I do ask the audience that we wait until the microphone's in your hand
And
before
we'll
you
be
ask a
here.
question.
I'll be here, yeah.
Hi, I'm a middle school teacher of kids specifically in the autism spectrum, and I would love to be part of your program in developing the curriculum, because middle school, everybody's hypersexual across the environment. It's their body's changing. So for your question, you know, I tell them at home in their bedroom with the door closed. I tell the parents, I give the curriculum that I can't teach my students to the parents that I've gotten over the years, make a book. It's in an envelope, here you go. So they can take it and talk to them about body changes, about hair growing, the whole spectrum. And then I always tell the parents, I will always teach your son and daughter quiet hands at school, not at school. At home in your bedroom with the door closed. That's your body, your space. Because I try to teach personal space. If we don't teach them about their body, they will always explore. We're human. So if we're their educators, we have to teach them the boundaries, and including the boundaries of not getting in other people's space. Like you said, the young man that went to jail for 3 months, we had one young man, not here. I heard the story of a man who wanted to buy this watch, and he kept going into the store and looking at the watch, but he didn't have the money, and he was on the spectrum. The young lady kept coming up to him and was like, "Can I help you?" He goes, "No." So the day he came to buy the watch, she ignored him. So his behavior, his learned behavior, was to grab her face because he wanted her attention. He was arrested because he touched her. So we need to teach them the social appropriate boundaries for interaction with others.
Absolutely, and it does need to start before the age of 18. Often the folks that we're getting, they're referred because something has already happened, because, that's too bad.
So just one quick comment on what she was saying. My son was kicked out of school at age 13. He's autistic. He obviously doesn't have the filters. His body was developing like any other body at that age, but his mind was much younger. He didn't know what was happening, and he made some inappropriate gestures. He couldn't really read or write, but he could spell vagina. Imagine that. So definitely middle school is a big need. Special ed kids typically are not included in special education.
Yes.
And that's a crime, I think.
Yes, it's a disservice to the community.
But my question really is, do you address at all in there personal values? Like allowing them to make the decision of what's right for them, not just showing them that, hey, these are signs that are inappropriate, but for some families, they don't engage until marriage. For some families, they, that kind of thing, because they're not good decision makers.
Yeah, yes, I think our program welcomes conversations about that. We have a class on like red flags and deal breakers. What are red flags for you, that something might not be going well? What's a deal breaker for you? Because it could be different for everyone. So yeah, we do invite conversations about that. Yes, and probably don't cover everything that could possibly be covered as well.
Hi.
Hi.
I have two quick questions. The first one is my daughter is 18 years old, but she has a cognitive development of a 1-year-old. How do we know then if we're going to be teaching sex education? How are we going to teach her if she has a 1-year-old cognitive development? And how can we teach her about sex education? The other question is, she is in a care home. Are we allowed to have a camera for her protection in her room just for safe issues? Considering the situation that she may have somebody, exactly.
Yeah, so you're bringing up a lot of big issues, and it's hard to come up with a program that addresses the learning needs of everyone, such a diverse group of people. As far as some material that's available for people who may not use language or may not verbally participate in a class, such as the ones that we have, I do hope that our web application will be a useful tool in sort of really getting some of those core concepts like differentiating between public and private body parts, public and private places of the house, the differentiating between wanted and unwanted touching, and some of those kinds of core concepts that someone really needs to have before they even start stepping into sexuality. So I would recommend someone starting there. And as far as the videotape, that's a tough thing. That's a tough one to answer, and I don't know if I could answer because I'm not sure about where she lives and what her location is. Some people might find that very intrusive, but I know that parents who have wanted to do that for the purpose of protection. And so you kind of, right, you have both sides of it, and it's hard to decide what's right.
Hello again, and I had this question, like when there is some transgender person who is going on hormones, they, no matter what age they will have like the mental cognitive, they will behave like a 13-year-old, they will behave like a teenager as soon as they start taking hormones, because they are like going through puberty over again. So how would you treat them? Like, because previously you mentioned one place that it's nice that you make it co-ed now, but previously when it was gender segregated, how would those people will they be put according to their birth gender, or will they be put according to their chosen gender, because that may not be the same. Mm-hmm. And some people can be non-binary, so they might not even identify as either. So what did you do?
So at this point, we have all participants in one class. I think previously, I certainly would have someone pick what class they want to be in according to how they identify. And I've certainly worked with some people who are going through transition, who often need a lot of support in managing a lot of the strong feelings that come along with having new hormones. And so a lot of people can really have some strong urges and really strong feelings that become difficult to manage when they're also navigating relationships.
Hi, I'm Earth Schwartz. I just want to say thank you. I think this is phenomenal and incredibly needed. I can't say enough about that. What would you suggest to other families or individuals who may have already come into complications with the law, where they attend schools that do not have any sort of training or programs like this, or districts that may be interested but don't know where to start? Can they contact you? Can we refer your program out? What would you suggest?
Yes, they can contact us, absolutely. Yes, we would welcome that.
I know the program is for adults, and you're probably contemplating on bringing it to the younger teenagers. But when I was looking through your presentation, for me, it seems like the introductory curriculum would fit the teenage years. Do you think that would be okay if, for example, it's already January and we don't have the curriculum for the younger populations yet, for adolescents, but then if we will just present to them like the introductory curriculum, because it looks like it would be appropriate for them?
Yeah, I think that there are learning objectives of the introductory curriculum that would be appropriate for people of all ages. All the images are adults. And so ideally, if I were going to do a middle school program, I would want to show images of young people. So we don't have that yet. But yes, I absolutely think that some of the learning objectives are appropriate for people of all ages.
I just wanted to say I thought the presentation was great. And I don't think it just caters to those that have disabilities, because I know those that don't, that still need to know boundaries and what you put on social media. And it's not just kids, it's 40-year-olds. So I just wanted to know, is there a way to adapt it? Because I think the part of teaching the public is for them to kind of understand. But if we don't understand it in the first place, how do we teach it to those that have developmental disabilities? Because they kind of learn from us when there isn't a curriculum. So when they see us doing inappropriate things, they're like, hey, me too. And then we're like, no, you're not supposed to do that. And they're like, well, you just did it. So do you adapt it so those of us that are kind of struggling with how to teach it on a basic level, so to speak, a human level, before we even approach it to those that may have a little difficulty or take longer to understand the curriculum?
You're not the first person to ask us this. And we've had some friends who clearly need a couple lessons. But we haven't adapted the curriculum at this point, not yet, but your point is well taken, because I think that there are components of social sexual education that's not included in regular sex ed that a lot of young people and adults miss out on, even including issues of consent. That's not always an issue that's talked about in a regular sex ed class that probably really needs to be.
Thanks so much for this presentation. It's amazing, and I can hardly wait until this is accessible to my daughter, who's 37. But one thing maybe you've had some feedback on this. The pacing of the dialogue was a little bit fast, and maybe some of the audio were a little bit distorted coming off your computer, but she might really benefit from a slower paced and a little bit more articulated. It was hard for me to hear some of the words, and behind those words were important concepts, but just a thought.
No, that's a good thought and well taken. I think that you're probably right. Yeah. I do think, some of the dialogue, it might have been a little bit distorted on this big screen here, but you could hear it the way, and it is fast-paced, and it may be too fast-paced for some people. Yeah.
Hi, do you have a segment on adults with dating and making sure the other person's not underage, and how to do that, what to do? Is there a segment on that?
We talk a lot about, that both people have to be adults, and how do you learn that, and yes, especially online. How do you get that information, and can you recognize a number? What are the numbers that, we do.
I just want to commend the curriculum for not just being safety, private spaces, which is what much of the curriculum I've reviewed has been, but in fact moving into the territory of appropriate relationships, real and including sexual relationships. Given some of the comments and some of the focus on people possibly being different gender identities, those kinds of issues, do you have anything about how to work with their families on those issues?
It's a good question. This is the first time that we've presented this anywhere, and so this is the first time we're getting feedback, and we plan to do it more and more, in the next year, and be getting more and more feedback like this, because it really is useful and it's really welcomed, and we don't have something on that right now.
It's a hard thing for anybody.
Yeah.
And I appreciate people waiting for the microphone, so hold on one second.
With the vignette, with the with regards to the watch, I thought it did an excellent job of her speaking through how she was feeling and then showing her assertiveness to stop the behavior. But the one piece that I wish would have been there was also some self-talk on her end of, it's okay for me to hurt this person's feelings because I'm more important and I need to take care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's that one little tiny crossover piece from, I know I need to do this, I'm feeling uncomfortable, but I don't want to hurt anybody, and so therefore I allow behaviors to take place because I don't want to hurt someone.
Mm-hmm.
But if that actual self-talk was put through of, it's okay for me to be okay for myself, and it's
Mhm.
okay to put myself first.
Mhm.
That's-
Yeah, that is a good point, because I think that is this kind of self-talk that prevents someone from using assertiveness.
This is Eunmi Cho, and thank you so much for your presentation today. Very necessary and important, content. And since you are collecting the constructive feedback, that maybe we can add captioning to help other people with impairments. Because of the accessibility at our university, all of those video clips that we develop, we must include the captioning, just to share with you.
Thank you. May prefer reading it than
I'm sorry if I missed this, but do you know of any resources that are currently available to assist teachers and other people in the public schools on these topics?
Other resources that are available?
Yeah, because it sounds like this isn't currently available, but I have some students who struggle with some of these concepts and boundaries and understanding social norms and flirting and things.
The Circles program is probably the most widely used kind of social sexual program that's used in special education programming that I'm aware of. And it's also really expensive. So often schools can't afford it. But that is probably the most widely used one that I'm aware of.
Okay, and then my second question was, do you know, or have any of you had experience with who at the school will typically address these topics with a student? Is it generally whoever is, comfortable doing it, or who's most qualified, or how have you seen it maybe play out with students you've had in the public schools?
I do think different districts do it differently. I think some may have like a social skills group on it that perhaps a school psychologist runs. Sometimes it's the general special educator. But your point is well taken that I do think it's a lot more effective with a person who's comfortable with it, like night and day. And so I do think that's important. I don't necessarily think this is for everyone. I don't know if all teachers would be effective teachers of this kind of education.
Yeah.
I do think that some comfort and some specialty is important.
Thank you.
Have you thought of sharing this information with sexual assault organizations such as Women Escaping a Violent Environment, otherwise known as WEAVE in Sacramento?
Yes, we do have relationships with like our family justice centers and encourage them to refer folks who may have been victims of violence.
The UC Davis Mind Institute was created in 1998 with a promise to find cures for neurodevelopmental disorders. Every day, our physicians and researchers come closer to fulfilling that promise. Their groundbreaking research on autism, Fragile X syndrome, chromosome 22q11.2 deletion syndrome, ADHD, and other brain disorders are helping children achieve their fullest potential. Please visit our website to find out more about current studies, upcoming events, and how you can help make a difference.